Hello, Catherine Wilkinson. Welcome to Intent on Purpose with Laura Breksa.
Hello, thank you ever so much for having me, Laura. It's so wonderful to be here.
I love your website and what you do in teaching ESL to 3 to 8 year olds. It's a pretty
Thank you.
powerful time to learn English. It's very foundational. And I wanted to know what it is that motivates you to provide this material to children, regardless of the circumstances they can't control. It's not expensive at all. It's high quality materials as far as I can see, and I homeschooled my four children at one time or another. I was not successful in teaching them to read. They learned that from other people. But what is it that motivated you to make this accessible?
Yeah, so probably like a lot of people, the OET in my business isn't where it is now, where I first started out. And it's not something that I had planned all along from the beginning. So it's kind of progressed into where it is now. And initially I started out just as an online ESL teacher. I was teaching children online who were in China. So they were just learning English. And I loved it. I kind of found my purpose there and meeting these children all the way around the other side of the world and getting to exchange culture whilst also educating them and helping them further their future education opportunities. It just felt really powerful. And then I went down the private route, offering my own curriculum with students. But something just felt like it was missing. And I'm one person, I'm a human being. I have the same 24 hours in a day that everyone else does. And there's only so many children that I could tutor in a day. There was all these other thousands of children who also are learning English that I couldn't serve. Not to mention, private tuition is not cheap. It's only really accessible to certain people. I value my time and my one to one lessons. So it wasn't attainable for everybody. And I knew that there was a big gap. And I think that's where it's kind of driven the OET today. And I wanted a way to be able to help thousands of children all around the world, not just in China, but anybody, doesn't matter their circumstance or location or anything along those lines. I wanted English to be accessible to them because, as we know, English is a global language. And if you can speak English, you're able to communicate with other people. It does offer higher education opportunities, which then leads to better paid positions around the world. So the goal really was how could I then serve all of these families, but as an affordable way. And that's where I've gone down the route of printable resources. I've got the experience, I have the knowledge behind me, I have the skill set. So putting it all into play, I've then created these really beautiful packs that are affordable that then families can access. And then with, my privileged position, obviously I can sell them to people who can afford it, but I've now started reaching out to non-profit organizations that are supporting children in different countries to say, "Hey, I have this resource. Would it help your students, the people that you're helping?" So I'm able to help even more people that way that I wouldn't necessarily be able to reach or may not have heard of the resources I provide. So it does feel really meaningful where the OET is at now. And it's very exciting. Very exciting where we're going. Yes.
Very, very exciting. Very exciting. So, who designs your material? Who does the illustrations on them, especially the videos? Who does that?
Well, I do. I don't do the drawing, but at the moment, the OET is a one-man band, aka me. And I utilize other resources, so programs such as Canva, where it's kind of an all-in-one business package, and you have access to um, digital tools where you can put videos together. I can put my presentations and my printables together. I can purchase graphics, clip art, or use the content that's already on Canva and create something that's really supportive to ESL learners. So, vocabulary flashcards, I make printable games, I make printable crafts. So you name it, you can put it together in this program. And with so many people online now, it's just, a click of download and they've got it to use at home.
That's pretty cool. I'm very proud of myself, Catherine. You know why I'm proud of myself?
Tell me.
I learned how to make a downloadable audio
Ooh, well done.
on WordPress. Thank you. I was very proud. So, because I keep WordPress and websites for people who are not techie,
They
It
are a bit of a
can
headache.
it can be tricky. So that's pretty impressive. So downloadable files, you downloadable courses, and you do this all on your own. So that's pretty much a passion that you live on purpose. You've really carved out the time to do it. So you make the lessons and they're static. They stay. You don't change them. So once they're made, they're made.
Pretty much. I mean, my content is very different to when I started. As with
Mhm.
any skill set, when I look back at the resources that I made several years ago, I think, oh my goodness, shocking. But that's part of the learning, progress and your own personal development, isn't it? So now, yes, I have. I'll update resources if they need updating. But generally speaking, once they're available, it's a case of they then, that one download, printable download can be accessed to unlimited families. Um, and then to make things even more accessible, I record videos that are published on YouTube. So even if families can't afford the printable, they can still watch the YouTube videos for free and they can still learn English that way as well.
So what is the process of learning English? I think English is an incredibly difficult language to learn. I have a husband who speaks Japanese, a
Wow.
daughter who speaks Japanese and Italian, another daughter who speaks Russian. And I think they had a much easier time learning those languages than English because of all the exceptions and all the unnecessary letters. Thank you, England. All right. English
Sorry
and
about that.
French words, unnecessary letters, but and all the like the word present, and present. Anyway, how difficult is ESL? What's the process?
I don't envy people that have to learn English as a second language, and my hat goes off to non-native English speakers who are teachers. So who've learnt the language and then teach others. They are a million times better teacher than I am because they've gone through the process themselves. And hold my hands up. I'm actually, I'll let you in on a secret. I'm awful at learning languages. I'm
Hmm.
terrible. Which is shocking for a language teacher. But in terms of learning English, just with any skill, really, it's a case of lots of repetition and practice and finding the resources that fit how you learn naturally. So, obviously, we have auditory learners, we'll have visual learners, you have kinesthetic learners. So, finding resources that, especially for children as well, that match their learning style is really key to retaining that new information. So, obviously, I specialize in young children, 3 to 8 year olds, and at that age, it's a lot of play-based learning. So I try to, even though I make printables, I try to steer away from the traditional textbooks that they might find in schools because it's not how children naturally learn at that stage. Children are just as we would teach them our native English, that's how they're going to learn English from a young age as well, through role play, like you would do. Set up a pretend shop at home or pretend doctors with your teddies. You would then incorporate your own native language alongside some English words. And then over time, you would switch out, the percentage from the language they're familiar with to English and things like that. So that's just one example. Another example could be playing some games. So I like to teach families to use the simple game tic tac toe. Where you have three in a row.
Yeah. You can't
But
win.
yeah, I think if you know like the trick,
Yeah.
you're always going to win, aren't you? But
Yeah.
at that age, they might not know that.
There is a trick.
Yes, if you start in a certain box, then you're always going to win, I believe. It happens with our family anyway. I don't know if it's just a fluke.
Okay, you can tell me that trick later, and I'll
Okay. Instead of the noughts and the crosses, though, that's what we call it in England, noughts and crosses. Instead of the noughts and the crosses, you could use like flashcards, for example. So you could have a set of flashcards, and you have to match three in a row. You could then, with the same flashcards, depending on the children's ability, ask them to tell you what's on the card or make a sentence with the card, or even design the card themselves. And then you could use those cards to build a story. So, can you see how there's different levels that we can progress using the same material, but we're expanding and we're doing so in a natural way? We're not teaching nouns, verbs, adverbs, adjectives. That's all important, of course, but that can come later on. At first, we're just making it exciting and accessible to our children and building that into a daily routine around family life. When we read a story, okay, let's read a bilingual story that's in English and Spanish, for example. So, I suppose my outlook on teaching English is a little bit different. When I was teaching one on one, it was a bit more formal. We were then breaking up the sentence that we would read, and we would pick out, okay, what's this word in the sentence? Can you then make a sentence with a verb and an adjective and things like that? So there was a bit more formal learning in that sense. But when you're teaching such young beginner learners, it's important to not bore them because you're going to switch off that creativity in a
yeah, yeah,
second, and then you won't get
yeah.
that back. They'll be
Mhm,
completely disengaged and think, "I'm not doing that. It's so boring. I don't want to do
mhm,
learn English. Well, I'd rather be playing." Well, play. Make English playtime. Make it fun.
mhm.
Make it exciting. And yeah, that's kind of my philosophy of how to teach your children English from a very young age.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, how do parents teach a child English when they themselves do not even speak English well or read English? How does that work?
No, that's a great question. And that's something that a lot of my audience does struggle with, because if you're not confident or fluent in a language, then you do have that like internal voice, I suppose, that says, well, if I don't even know it, how am I going to teach my children, or my children, I'm just going to fail them. If I can't teach myself, I can't teach them. But, again, with the financial aspect, for these families, a private tutor might not even, be on the cards. It might not be something they can afford. So it's kind of switching that out, and that's why I like to provide everything for the family, because I frame it more as a bonding experience. Spend time with your children, learn with them. We are all human and we all make mistakes. Like for my own kids, I home educate my two children, and they're very quick to point out if I make a mistake, but, I deal with that with grace. So I say to them, "Oh, yeah, mummy made a mistake." "Silly mummy." We just breeze through, we do the corrections together, and it's modeling that mistakes are okay to make. Nobody is perfect 100% of the time, and the mistakes we make are the way that we learn. So I know it can be quite difficult to change that frame of mind and feel more confident to teach your children something that you know nothing about, or you're not, an expert in. But it's actually more fun learning with your children and progressing together. And it feels so much more rewarding when you have made that progress, and you can reflect back on that journey and the memories that you've made as you grow as well. So that's kind of how I try to frame it, because I appreciate that English is a difficult language, and the parents themselves may not have been in a position where they could access an English education themselves growing up. So,
Absolutely. The part of the country where I live in the East Bay of Northern California, the school district has so many different languages. It's incredible in the East Bay. I think I looked up how many different languages are spoken, and I think the number that's coming to mind is so astronomical that I'm thinking I must have remembered the number wrong. So I don't want to.
Laura, according to the Bay Area Equity Atlas, it is 160 languages.
But you can't translate the paper. Usually all the documents that come home are in Spanish and English. And the
Wow.
children are often learning English at school. So the child has to be the one who's telling the parents what are
Yes.
happening. So it's incredibly difficult for the parent who doesn't speak English to have their children learning English at school, and
Mm,
they can't back up what's happening because they don't have the materials.
of
I know I
course.
volunteered at a one summer at the local library just reading books with an English learner so they could have someone pattern how to read it and hear them read, which is funny because I don't always sound right, but anyway.
I think
Um,
that's a wonderful thing that you did though, and
isn't that
it's
kind of a cool library program to have people
yeah,
volunteer
that's
and let
so wonderful.
the child who's learning English get to read out loud and have a word maybe said up repeated to them how a native reader would, read it? I thought that was pretty cool.
Exactly, that's such a nice thing that you did.
So, you're a qualified teacher, you've been home educating, and you got over 10 years experience, and this is where you're putting it. So how do you advocate for this? You call yourself an advocator. So you're doing it, you're making it available, and now you're working with agencies. Now, how do you approach agencies with this program? Do you like call them, show up at the door? How have you done that?
Definitely not showing up and saying, "Hey," at the door. I'm quite an anxious person, and uh, I don't put myself out there. So, like something like this is positive, but quite a big thing, like for me to prepare for. So definitely behind my computer screen. But I think that the passion kind of exceeds the fear. I'm so driven to making sure that I'm helping thousands and thousands of children around. Like that's the goal. I want to help as many children as possible in any way that I can. And I'm not made of money, I'm just your average, family person. So it's not a case that I can donate thousands of pounds or dollars to other charities. So it was kind of taking a step back and thinking, well, what can I do? Okay, well, my expertise is in this field. I already make these resources. How can I then reach people who need them? Okay, let's look up charities that are already within the education field and helping children. So that's where I started, and I'd been following one very small refugee school for quite a while. I don't know, maybe 1 or 2 years. I can't remember, but for a long time anyway. And I just felt really drawn to them, and I saw the work that they were doing, and it just felt quite aligned. And the school is tiny; it's just refugee children, so they can't enroll in a local school
Mm,
because they're
mm,
refugees. I reached out. I found the email address on their website. I reached out to the founder. The school's run by volunteers and donations only. There's no for profit element to that. And I just said, "Hey, this is what I do. This is what I offer. Um, would you be interested?" Like, there's no. Uh, I'm not asking for anything in return. I don't want you to sign up to XYZ, just here, these are my resources. Would your kids benefit from them? Um, and first time I reached out, I didn't get a response. They were probably busy at that time. These charities are so busy, they have so much work. But I did, when you just feel so drawn, and I was like, "Oh, no, I want to try and reach out again." So I
mm,
left it a couple of months and I reached out again, and I got a reply, and they were so excited about these resources. They were like, "Oh yeah, we've got so many children in this grade. They're learning English. This is great. Well, I'll get the teachers to print them out, and they can do them with the kids." So it just felt really rewarding. Like, oh, I'm actually going to make just a tiny impact, but
mhm.
a big impact to those children. And I think that. I kind of got a bit hooked. And then I don't know how you feel about AI. I know not everybody is on board, but I use AI a lot to help. I get a lot of ideas and brain fog, and it helps to kind of put priority things in order, organize things. Anyway, and I used it to say, hey, this is what I want. I would like to work with nonprofits around the world, small nonprofits who are, working with children, XYZ, blah, blah, blah. And it listed some potential organizations to work with. And then I, did some research online and I reached out to them as well. So yeah, it's really exciting. And it just goes to show that even if you don't have lots of money, you can still make such an impact. And I know it's still tiny on the grand scale of the whole world, but to those children who then will be able to actually learn English, that's a huge impact in their, world.
Mhm.
Um, so that's how I got started and kind of where I'm going now. Like I'm still in the middle of those conversations. And yeah, I can't wait to help as many as possible.
That's great. I love AI as a research. I kinda consider, AI as like an older employee sitting next to me in an office
Yeah.
that I can turn to for advice. And
Yes.
research is excellent because it searches more than I could search or knows the right questions if you give it the right prompts and keep asking
Exactly.
it prompts. And a little bit, um, miffed. I appreciate what you're saying, but I think you're doing a bigger work than you're giving yourself credit for because you teach one person to read, you have an influence on their reading, then they themselves have a huge impact on
Mm.
people. So your work is gonna go on and on. You know that.
Yeah, I haven't thought about it like that before, but
Yeah.
I suppose that's
Yeah.
kind of it's like a seed, isn't it? And or the snowball effect, I suppose.
Yeah.
Yeah, where it's just
Well, a
collecting.
tree where there's branches. And the
Yes.
fact that you are saying, "Well, if I just help one person," but when you help one person, like I'm saying, you're just one generation into this, right?
True, yes.
So, if there was one thing, if this went to the whole world, what message would you give the entire world? Anything you wanna say about any topic.
I suppose a big thing that stands and obviously you picked up on this call is having that belief inside yourself and to not let anything externally get in your way. So um I love what I do and but it's taken me quite a while and a lot of pushing back and forward internally to get to this point. I'm not a very confident person. I do have the self-esteem struggles and I could let that, put everything on a hold. But then I'm not living. I'm not living with that intention, with that true purpose, with that passion. I'm letting the fear take control. And these fears aren't even real. They're just things that I have made up in my head. Well, nobody wants to see that. Nobody's going to be interested. That's not worth doing. What if impact is that going to have? They're just things I've told myself. So something that's really important is to not listen to those fears because they're only false messages that you've made up. They're not based on any evidence that has actually happened. And the worst thing that's going to happen if you put yourself out there is that someone's going to say, no, no, that's not for me. No thanks. Like, maybe they won't be all nice about it, but the worst that's going to happen is they'll say no, right? And you can move on to the next person and the next person. And the next, like, the only person that stands in your way is you. And the only time that you're going to fail is if you stop and you say, enough's enough, and you quit. But when you give up on yourself and your dreams, is when you fail. Until then, it's okay to make the mistakes. It's okay to have the worries and the fears. They're natural, they're human. It's our brains protecting ourselves. But you have to still push through to live your life fully.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate your time
Thank
and
you.
all that you do. I believe in children. I believe that they're absolutely worth the effort. And the way you put it, circumstances they have no control over, I believe is the way you wrote it is a powerful thought. So thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Laura. Thank you for your belief and your time in this call and the advice that you have. And yeah, I'm very thankful for that.